episode of the Coaching Cast podcast is brought to you in partnership with the brilliant Soulfully Single, founded by Julie Wild. Soulfully Single is the supportive, fun and empowering community for sociable singles who want to grow in confidence, reconnect with themselves and others, and use their single time to be the next best version of themselves. Soulfully Single aims to ease loneliness through community, connection and personal growth. So if you find yourself recently single or know someone who is, head over to www.soulfullysingle.co.uk to download a free workbook to help you heal and move on after the end of a relationship, or join one of the feel-good monthly coffee meetups.
Hello, I'm Suzy.
And I'm Lisa, and this is the Coaching Cast. We're the no-nonsense podcast chatting about the things impacting you at work right now, helping you to survive and thrive in today's workplace.
We discuss different topics each episode, sharing our ideas, hints, and top tips from our experiences of working in the corporate world, running our own businesses, and also being qualified coaches. We also try to have a few laughs along the way too, because, well, taking yourself too seriously is a little bit boring. We hope you enjoy listening. In today's episode, we have a guest joining us, Charlotte Holroyd, founder of Creative Wilderness. We will be talking to Charlotte about her inspiring and heartwarming story of business freedom. So stay with us and enjoy. Charlotte, welcome to the Coaching Cast. We are super excited to chat with you today about your story and a topic that we haven't covered before, business freedom. I feel this is a story we need to hear, especially on a dreary, dark, wintry day, for some inspiration and a little bit of glow, for sure. So to introduce you to our listeners, you have your own business, Creative Wilderness, which is an ethical, sustainable branding design studio, working mainly with small businesses. And when you aren't designing sustainable brands, you can be found out in nature. So hiking, wild swimming, and exploring in your VW camper van, Autumn, who we're going to be talking a lot about today, for sure. So welcome. And also, I feel like I need to start by saying, can you please tell us a little bit more about Autumn?
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited. And I feel like chatting today will inspire me because, yeah, it's been a bit of a while since I had a camper van adventure. So I think it's going to inspire me and relive some of the moments. So, yeah, Autumn is a 90. So she's about 25 years old. I think she classes as vintage. She's bright orange. Inside, she's got this kind of 70s like wooden vibe, and I've got fairy lights in there and bunting. So she just feels very warm and cozy when you're inside there. And yeah, named after my favorite season. So she is orange. So that's kind of where the autumn came in. And also I just love autumn and the colours and the leaves, and also that kind of 70s hazy sunshine. So that was the inspiration behind the name. And I've had Autumn for 3.5 years now. Yeah, so it's been amazing. And she has been life-changing. I've never things bring you happiness, you know, and kind of like all about experiences. But I think buying Autumn showed me that actually the experiences I can have just been incredible. And it's absolutely been a life-changing kind of opportunity, owning my camper van and getting out into nature.
Wow, amazing. And I said to you before, like, I met you in the summer, and when you were telling me about your story with Autumn, I was just like, this is amazing. Like, this is amazing. This is so inspiring. And we're going to get into that now. And you just said there, you know, it was life-changing for me when I got her. So tell us a little bit more about how it was life-changing for you.
So I think, well, I've always wanted a camper van since the age of 6. I remember being in Newquay and seeing like cool surf dudes in a vintage VW. And I was just mesmerized as a 6-year-old, like, wow, they look so free. And they'd just been surfing and then they were coming back into their camper van. And I was very lucky that my dad had one as well. So I got to kind of experience a bit of it. But I always knew I would get one at some point. But I think, as anyone can appreciate, I used to work in design agencies. So I didn't feel like I could drive around in a camper van, you know, rocking up there. But it sort of always felt like something that would happen eventually. And I wasn't quite sure when. And then I started my business. And I think in the first couple of years, you're making money, but you don't want to spend anything just in case. So I had that. And then I think when I got to the 3rd year, I was like, oh, I feel like I'm doing well now. And I've got a bit of money saved and I feel kind of stable in my business. And then I just thought, you've just got to go for it. So I kind of went, the first one I saw was awful. The guy was really sexist. He was saying like, why have you not brought a man with you? You know, so it kind of, it put me off. And I had a few bad experiences like that. And I felt like, do you know what? I don't want to buy off these people because they're not respecting me. And then I gave up, and then I just randomly, it popped into my head to just look on eBay, and yeah, Autumn popped up and I just thought, wow, she's perfect. So I just went with it. And like any scary decision, I think I felt quite anxious the night, like almost like, you know, not that kind of whoa excitement. And then I realized it was because it was like my dream to have it. And I think you go through the emotions of like, kind of, should I do this or should I not do this? Yeah. And then I got it just before lockdown. So it was a great thing to have. And I used her a lot in lockdown. I was working in a you know, kind of driving to sit by a lake and work on my laptop and things like that.
Amazing. Oh, sounds so idyllic. That's for sure. So, you know, we talked in the intro about this kind of idea or this concept around business freedom. And I think some of our listeners may have their own businesses. So there's a piece around that flexibility, like you've just mentioned there, about being able to go and work anywhere next to a lake, you know, sat in autumn and cracking on with your day job. And also now, you know, post-COVID, there's that rise in more flexible working if you don't have your own business as well. So for some of our listeners, I suppose this term business freedom might actually be new. It might be something that they've not necessarily kind of connected with before. So can you just tell us a little bit more about what business freedom means for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it means so many different things to different people, because it's business freedom might be, I want to have more time to spend with my children or with my family, or I want to write a book. So it is very, very personal. But for me, I used to always kind of, when I was working in agencies, look out the window when it was a sunny day and wish I could be out there instead of, you know, stuck in the office behind my computer screen. So yeah, I think for me, it was about being in nature and also having a bit more freedom to just follow my natural rhythms. And if I want to go in on a venture, I can go and do that for a bit, or, you know, my work would support me to have some space in the week. If I felt like, you know, today I just want to go for a wild swim in the morning and then come back and work. And also, yeah, having the space to go off in autumn in more longer term, you know, longer adventures for a couple of weeks. So I think for me, it was the freedom to go on adventures and be out in nature and away from my laptops at sometimes. But also actually it can work as well. I don't need to be always away from my laptop. It's not like I hate it. It's it's having that space to have some, I think it's flexibility for me within my week and within my year, that I don't have to do 9 to 5 every single day and have like a holiday for 5 weeks of a year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you know, the world's just moved on, hasn't it? You know, the world of work as well. People don't expect you to be as rigid in that kind of time scale around, 9 to 5, and, you know, that more kind of traditional way of working. Absolutely. I bet Lisa is itching in the background there, because you talked about how your work fits around that kind of sense of adventure and having more adventures. And obviously, Lisa spends a lot of her time, as our listeners know, outside of the UK, don't you? So I bet this is really resonating with you, isn't it, so far?
It is massively, but also like on a whole nother level, because I think even I have the privilege to be able to travel and work from different countries, which is an adventure. But I love the idea of even being adventurous in the space within which I'm working at any given time, because as much as I have the ability to work in a different country. It's still within the confines of a room, and it's still conventional in that respect. I could just be working from anywhere at that point. I could be just working from the UK because I'm just in a space in my house, or in a house somewhere. But I've never really thought about the notion of working in actually any space I choose, like, and changing that environment. And it's so evoking that idea of working. I mean, I'm hooked on the idea of working next to a lake now, because I can picture it, and I'm just like, oh my God, I would do any job if it would allow me to work from next to a lake. Like, surely that makes any piece of work that you've got to do, any admin, far more enjoyable when you've got that as your backdrop. But yeah, it just sounds so very special. It sounds, and very, I would have thought, inspiring and motivational when you're working in those types of spaces, because I think that's what I love, is the idea of your environment contributing to your creativity. And I do think working in quite stimulating environments stimulates you so much more in terms of your thinking, because it's so funny, I think, how conventionally, and definitely pre-COVID, so many of us worked in offices, and there's nothing inspiring really about an office space. If anything, the reason I've loved working in those environments is to do with the people around me and how people inspire me, but the space itself doesn't tend to contribute to that.
No, I mean, before I got Autumn, my brand name was Creative Wilderness, because all my ideas would come to me. I'd go for a hike. So I very much, my time in front of my computer is almost the action. So I wouldn't ever sit in front of my computer, even if I'm writing a blog post, or I'm coming up with the idea for a course, or I'm working on a client project. It will be outside. And interestingly, since I got my camper van and almost spent more time in nature, I kind of thought, how can I actually do more of this even day to day when I'm back home? So I take client, instead of having a Zoom and we go out into nature together if they're close by, or I record a workshop for people to do, and I go and sketch outside on my iPad. So it's like there's so many different ways you can get away from the screen and have little mini adventures within your day. And I think, we think we have to, work has to just happen in front of the computer. But for me, I think movement and being outside, your thinking is way more expansive. So if you can, do that and then come back and do things on your screen.
And that's a really good point, actually, around, I love what you said there about like little adventures in your day. Like, you don't, obviously what you've been describing is, quite significant in terms, and it's quite obvious in terms of, getting your camper van and you can travel to a different location and you can set yourself up there, or you can be hiking up I was going to say mountain, and then I was thinking that is fair. But yeah, it is mountain. I'm thinking, do we have many mountains in the UK? I'm going to get absolutely berated now by like keen geographers across the country. I mean, I know for Suzy, a small mound can feel like a mountain, can't it, Suze? With your hiking capabilities. But but actually, you're right. You can create little adventures in your day where you just get out of the house and you go for a walk, or you go and change your environment for an hour. And I do that day to day, just to give myself a break from staring at the screen, from staring at the four walls, and get huge benefit from doing that. That's why I love so much, just getting out even and going to a coffee shop and sitting there on my own. I say on my own in inverted commas, really, because again, I just love being in an environment with other people around and other things going on. I find that relaxing and stimulating at the same time, which I don't know whether that's possible. That might be contradictory, what I just said. But and I love being able to do that. And that does feel like I've had like a little trip out in the day. And it just helps to change the scenery, and it does immediately trigger different thinking. It's like what we used to talk about even pre-COVID, didn't we, Suze? Like, we worked in the same corporate space for a few years, and we used to encourage ourselves and our teams to get outside and go for a walk for 30 minutes if they were going to do their one-to-one, just get out of the office space, because it just changed the dynamic, and it immediately changes your state. I think the way you hold yourself and the way you're thinking and the way you're behaving, to be able to just go for a walk around the business park we worked on, just opens the mind in a different way.
Absolutely. Some of my best ideas, I think, came on that walk from the office to the local Greggs on that
Oh,
business day.
the Greggs. I was going to say, brilliant. Now you've been honest to like share your like lunch snack of choice, the Greggs.
I honestly think it did. Now I'm just kind of thinking about it. You know, I think it did change my state, and I was more creative, I think, in the answers. And I know in the work that you obviously work in Charlotte, you know, your business and your job is very much about creative output. You know, it's about creating branding experiences for your clients. So I can totally see how being in nature and finding that inspiration in that more natural environment can then lead in to your work and those experiences that you create for your clients.
Yeah, I think it's been massive in it. I think, yeah, I don't think I could come up with all the work I do without going out and having my adventures, because I think and I think we're all creative. I think there's a thing where you think, oh, creative people, they're the people that do art and music, but I feel like every single one of us is creative. You know, when you're writing a blog or you're coaching someone, it's still the creation of something. So I think we all have to kind of nurture that creativity and look at ways that help fuel us, because I mean, I've experienced it. I think in my first year, I hardly took any time off, and then when it got to Christmas time, I basically was just exhausted for the whole 2 weeks. I couldn't do anything. And then I really thought, wow, you know, that I listened to my body and saw, okay, every couple of months I need to have an adventure, and then I'd come back and things were so much easier. I do things quicker. I do them with more impact. So it showed me the value of rest and adventure and kind of refueling and restoring. And it has an impact on my business, so that actually I enjoy it a lot more. And I think it's way more powerful what I do because I give myself that time. And as well, I just get so much wisdom from kind of climbing a mountain, and it kind of comes back, and then I think about my business kind of, okay, yeah, it's tough at this point, but remember when I climbed that mountain, I kept going. Or when I've been in autumn, actually I didn't give up. I kept going and found this perfect spot instead of just staying in a horrible car park by a main road. I kept exploring, and I could have just given up then, but I had this sense. So it's so funny that it just mirrors back when I'm in my business as well. The things that I've gone through out in autumn, they just give me like a bit of inner strength and perseverance when things maybe are a bit tougher in business and that type of thing.
Yeah. So talking about autumn then, you know, just bring to life for us. And I appreciate for each adventure, you know, each day is probably different. But if there is a standard or typical day working in autumn, you know, what does that look like? How do you actually make it happen?
Yeah, I mean, this year has been less. The last couple of years, I'd go out and maybe work, like I'd be away in Anglesey.
Okay.
You know, by one campsite was overlooking the sea, and so I do sort of like work for 4 hours, then maybe go for a swim in the sea, and then finish. So I don't work as long in there because it's kind of not quite set up, or I might be going away and sketching. But this year, I've just been more about just driving somewhere for a day or an afternoon.
Okay.
So locally, I'm in Manchester, but I drive out to sort of Macclesfield Forest and, you know, sit there and be sketching something or kind of, you know, doing that stuff. So more of the creative time, because I realized actually I don't mind working at home on my computer. I kind of now autumn, I want to be away and not be on my computer because, you know, I was just sat there. So I use the space in autumn to go and think bigger. And sometimes I'll have like a planning day for my business. So like a bit of a reflection day each season. And that's really nice to do out in autumn. So I'll park up, I'll go for a hike, I'll kind of, come back, do a bit of journaling, do a bit of planning and that. So yeah, there's a mixture of going away somewhere like Anglesey or the Lake District and interspersing adventure with work, or just kind of going for a little day adventure and staying somewhere and then driving back home.
I'm a big fan of Macclesfield Forest. So obviously I live in South Cheshire. We're getting a bit specific now. I get this, listeners, but Macclesfield Forest, if you're in that area, it is beautiful. It's one of my favorite places to go and just kind of wander through. And I can totally see how the landscape would be incredibly inspiring and quite soothing, I imagine, as, you know, especially with work. It's I love it. Oh, I'm jealous. I wish I was going there today.
Yeah, but I haven't done like a whole like go for a month and work, but I actually would be intrigued to try that abroad. But I think in this country, just with Wi-Fi and running out of battery, and especially because I do design, so you do kind of like need your computer quite a lot. But I think it's definitely possible, and I do know people that do Zoom calls, you know, in their van, and I've seen video people with big screens in their vans. But I think for me, it's a space to go out and have an adventure. So I kind of like doing it in a little bit and working at home, and then having the space away to go away and kind of forget about work and just have fun and freedom.
So where's been one of the craziest, I suppose, spots or places or locations that you've worked on one of your adventures? Is there anywhere that really stands out?
I think it's that where I said, so actually, sorry, it's not Anglesey. It's a place called Hell's Mouth in Wales, and it's just overlook at the Atlantic, and it's kind of like a big cauldron bay, but there's a campsite and you're on the hill, and it's a very basic campsite. It's just a field and you're right on a cliff. And I just sat outside and I had my little camping table set up and I had my laptop, and I was outside and just watching like the sea mist kind of descend, and then the sun came out. And I was working on a concept for a vitamin brand, and they were actually inspired by the sea. So it felt really in a kind of synchronous that I was creating their branding based on sat out at the sea. And I just loved it. And I was kind of just sat there working a bit and looking out over I think it would be the Atlantic Ocean, I'm thinking. That stands out for me, actually. Yeah.
Wow.
What a story.
I know.
I mean, I love that. I mean, I can see it right now. Like I'm just sat here in my home office in Cheshire, and I can absolutely picture, you know, that setup. I'm intrigued when you present back or take back, you know, like branding concepts to clients. Do you bring in that story of where it's kind of been curated from or inspired from, you know, back to them in terms of that presentation?
Yeah, I work with someone, she's like a leadership sustainable coach, but very much inspired by nature. So I sat by a tree a lot of the time, or sat in woodlands, and I was sketching out her ideas. And then I take a picture of it on my phone. And then when I present back the document, I obviously go through the stage of forming it from what I've come up with there. But I share like, yeah, this was formed out in nature, sat by a tree, or this was formed in the sea. Because I think, my whole brand's formed on that. So I think the people that work with me really buy into that. And even at the start of working together, I'll take them out into nature so they understand that it's all part of the process. And they always love it, even though some of the sketches I think, oh, these are they're very much kind of sketches, not, the finished item. But I think it just shows actually showing people the process and the kind of, not the messy middle, but the way you get there is really valuable. And I think we sometimes think everything's got to be really polished, but for people to understand how you've got there is really powerful for them, and they kind of value the idea even more.
Oh my goodness, totally. It creates so much depth to the idea. And, the way in which you're articulating the places you've been and what's inspiring you and what's contributing to your process, like Suzy's already stated, like we feel it and we can see it, and we haven't even been there. But I think that makes it so much more powerful and adds so much more meaning to it. And I can totally understand how, as someone who's working with you and wanting to utilize you as one of their key partners, how much more significant how much significance that adds to it, because it, as I said, it makes it just so much more real and more meaningful. Actually, there's just such a greater depth of meaning in the whole piece. It's incredible. What a unique, I was going to say, what an incredible USP that is. You can't, wow. Because that
all about
contributes to your own brand.
Yeah, I think because we're online a lot, so I think just naturally we maybe take ideas from other people, and a lot of our inspiration comes online. So for me, especially as a designer and a creative, you can go on Pinterest and just see, you've seen it all before hundreds of times. So I just always say, like, get the ideas are never formed looking at someone else, because we want something that's going to be long lasting. And same for other business owners. So before I work with them, we'll go out and I'll get them to like forage for items that represent their business, so that they're actually thinking uniquely and not looking at other people. And then, like you say, it just has a lot more depth and meaning, and it's long lasting, I think. So I'm all about like almost like crafting something that takes a long time, as opposed to it being a very fast like fashion piece, I suppose, and thinking about clothes.
And actually, it's really connecting to all the senses, and I think that's I was struggling to find the language this morning, but that's what I was leaning towards. And I think when you can create anything and bring it to life using all of our senses, that's where the depth comes from and where the meaning comes from, because you're literally triggering in us all of our memories of those sorts of environments, like the smells, the images, the visual, the touch of things. And that's what really gets all of us like properly like woken up and connected to something, is when we're getting that. Because I mean, we talk about that a lot in our coaching, actually, and how you can really support individuals on a much deeper level when you enable them to fire up all their senses and whatever you're talking about, because it really creates a much stronger connection and a much stronger meaning. So it's a really, it's a really incredible thing to be able to do. And I can imagine from a marketing brand perspective, like how much more that elevates, what your clients are trying to achieve.
Yeah, definitely. I think, like you say, it just gives some depth, it gives some meaning, and it just gives it more power, because I think it's very noisy out there. So the more uniqueness we can bring to it, and the more personality and the more bravery, I think, as well, it makes just people feel a little bit braver, because you really are passionate about your brand that you formed, and it's kind of come from the depths of your soul almost. Without getting too kind of into it, but it's not just something that you've like put on a spreadsheet. It ticks these boxes. It's actually something, and for me, that's been a big part of my business journey. Is it's almost been a lot of stuff that actually it's got to feed my soul. So I might not have made the most financially wise, not financially wise, but I think I've not chased the money as much as it's always been a balance of like, actually, is this feeding my soul as well? And it's it's good for abundance, but also it's good for my soul. So I've been quite intentional in maybe turning down some things or going in different directions.
Amazing. I mean, I could talk about this. I love this concept, this idea. I'd love to do more of this year for myself, and actually for my business as well. One of the things I was thinking about, though, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, and you touched upon it before around your setup in autumn. I suppose, are there any drawbacks to maybe, your version of business freedom is about, going on either adventures in the day or adventures kind of more medium term, like a couple of weeks or whatever, and parking autumn up and being inspired by the environment and the landscape that you're in? What are the drawbacks, though? Because there must be some, surely, for this kind of version of business freedom. Or am I just being a bit too kind of dreary and pessimistic on this like wintry day?
No, I mean, I'm not going out now, definitely not. Because it goes dark, so there's definitely less adventuring happening. Obviously it's colder, so I don't go and sit in autumn that much. I have a heater, actually, which people are always like, wow. So I have like a diesel heater that keeps it warm if I need to. But I feel this year it depends on the year. So the years past, I was very much about as much adventure, but I think then you have a little bit of a rootlessness feeling. So you kind of don't have as much routine. So this year I've been more focused on having like a routine and a regular rhythm to my week, and then autumn adventures happen every couple of months, and I'll go or we'll go away at the weekend or take a Friday off and that type of thing. So it's shifted a bit this year. I felt like I've just felt more rooted. So I think if you do it all the time, and I've not ever lived in autumn full time, but I know even from experience in 2 or 3 weeks, it's tiring. So even making a cup of tea or getting up in the morning, it takes a lot more energy than it would if you were at home. So if you're working away in your van, almost you've got to find somewhere to park up. So that's, it's not like you find these great places. A lot of them you can't, you're not allowed to park there and that. So there is a bit of a YouTube ideal that's put out there that doesn't exist. So it is like anything. And that's why I find it more comfortable a lot of the time to work on my desk at home if I'm using my laptop, and then go away in autumn, because as well, you're like, Wi-Fi isn't great in these spaces. You may be using your phone for the internet, and your battery's running out. So, it's all like practical things that you don't often think about, but loads of people do it. It's just, for me, what works better for me is actually, going away in the van for the adventures. And if I'm doing some sketching or conceptual stuff, or going on a client trip and I've stayed over, that works quite well, actually. Like if you're doing I did a client workshop, and then I stayed in a campsite and then spent the next day kind of sketching and coming up with ideas for them.
Amazing. Amazing. So what have you got any adventures planned? Because we're at the start of a new year now, so the start of 2024. So have you got any adventures kind of already planned in the diary for this kind of brand new year ahead?
Yeah, so doing a small adventure to the sort of Lake District, Morecambe Bay coast for a 4 or 5 nights. And I normally try and start the new year with like a New Year's Day swim or a hike or something like that. So doing that. And then next year, I really want to go to Ireland and go around like the coast of Ireland and Cornwall, because I haven't been there yet in the van. And I'm not sure if I can fit all this in, but I haven't been to Europe as well in autumn. And I feel like Europe would be maybe more of a like month-long trip. So yeah, my partner works a regular job, so I have to kind of sometimes do the adventures on my own. But yeah, he's not as much freedom as me. So they're the adventures next year, and I do try and get like 2 or 3 big ones in. But a lot of the time I just go away for like a night somewhere or a weekend somewhere, so you can do sort of little mini adventures close. And the Lake District is so close, so I love going there. That's one of my favourite places, and the Peak District as well.
And you haven't mentioned, but we were talking about at the start, and we need to let our listeners know, because you're wearing a very beautiful jumper. It's a gorgeous colour, but you were saying it's the same colour as Autumn, the camper van. So it's like it was meant to be that you were talking about her today.
Yeah,
I love it.
So, yeah, dressed as my camper van. Yeah.
So it's a gorgeous kind of burnt orange jumper, which I absolutely love. The fact that we've represented Autumn in many ways through the conversation today.
Yeah, she's kind of more famous, I think, than me.
Yeah. Amazing. So where does she live then, when you're kind of maybe not traveling around in her as much? Is she kind of parked up at your home, or
yeah,
like
she's just
out
on,
and about?
Yeah, she's just on our driveway. Because I do use it. I don't have a car because I don't really drive that much. So I you know, a lot of places I cycle or get the bus, and you can use her as a car as well. So I can go to the local supermarket. It's a bit more like stressful than just going in a normal car. But I'd actually, yeah, use her quite a lot. So at least once a month, I try and at least do a night away, or, you know, a couple of nights, something like that, if it's not a big long adventure. Or yeah, like I like parking up sometimes on like a Wednesday afternoon, go for a hike, and then working her in the afternoon. So a bit more in summer that happens.
Fab. Oh, so I feel like this is like my spirit animal. I need to get one of these. I'm obsessed with this idea. Yeah, 100%. Oh, I'll be out there like looking for you now in the local areas, trying to spot you.
She has got her own Instagram, and yeah, and we were on the BBC News. Was it last year or the year before? Yeah, there's a little kind of BBC News segment about going away in your camper van and working. So yeah, I can share that after.
Yeah, and what's her Instagram handle then? Because I'm going to look it up now.
Autumn in the Wilderness.
Autumn in the Wilderness. Amazing.
Yeah, I haven't posted for a while actually. I've been a bit lazy this year, but I was quite when I first got it.
Been too busy having adventures and all this business freedom.
Yeah.
It's absolutely fine. So if our listeners now have listened to this episode and your story around Autumn and creating a business that has that element of freedom in it that works for you and your, you know, lifestyle, and they're thinking, I'm inspired, I want to do a version of this for myself, you know, what would be your top tips for our listeners?
I think the first thing is to be intentional and look at your business as a whole and almost think, is that bringing me the freedom? What's draining my energy? What's taking me away from freedom? And how can I shift that and bring a little bit more freedom? So if you're maybe finding that every week you've got to ring clients, can you shift that and just do voice notes to them? Or can you let them know that do you know what I mean? So like little processes you could put in place that give a bit more space within your business. If you feel like I want to go away and have like 2 months off as an adventure, what could you do in your business to support that? So can you bring in more money from some way, or create a different type of product or offering that would mean that you can work quite intensely for a couple of months and then take a month off and have that freedom? So I think that's the first thing, is around like how your business is set up. The second thing is just to start small. So if your dream is to have a camper van to go off all the time, can you give yourself like a day and just see how that feels? Because I think a lot of it is the mindset and the guilt of taking time off away from your business. So to sort of start small, and then that actually proves to you how powerful it is to give yourself that space for adventure. And the third thing is to just be brave and just do it. I think the main thing, like hire a van or take a little step towards the thing that you want to do, and just keep that on your vision. I actually had a orange camper van on my vision board the year I got it, so obviously it did come true. So I think it's kind of like believing in the vision and thinking that you're going to make it work in some way, and just being very open to it coming to you.
Amazing. Well, what an inspiring story to start off the new year with, to give us all a bit of food for thought about how we can create more adventures for ourselves and also more kind of freedom in our business or work endeavors, whatever that might look like for us. So thanks so much, Charlotte, for coming on the Coaching Cast and talking to us today. It's been amazing to chat to you.
It's been so lovely to share. Yeah, you've inspired me to go on one of my adventures soon as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Charlotte.
We are coming to the end of today's episode, where we've been chatting to Charlotte about her story of business freedom. We hope you are now feeling inspired, curious, and motivated by Charlotte's stories of her adventures. So here are her top tips and recommendations from today's episode. So the top tips from Charlotte were: number 1, be intentional. So think about your business setup and how it can support you with your adventures. Number 2, start small. So just give yourself a day and see how that feels to reinvigorate your energy, your creative wisdom and power, and just see how that goes for you. And number 3, be brave. Give it a go. Just do it and take that first step.
We've got some self-coaching questions for you as well to try to help support you to make these wonderful changes to your working environment. So the first one is, what little adventures would you like to incorporate within your working week? So following Charlotte's advice, start small. It doesn't have to be a big adventure, but actually something small just to break up your day, get outside, can really make a big difference. Number 2 is, how can you create a little bit more adventure in your day? And number 3, what will doing this give you? So really think about that question to help motivate you to make some changes.
If you enjoyed this episode, check out our episode on the Tales of Small Business Ownership, which is episode 7 in season 3, and you can find it wherever you listen to your podcasts. Talking of episodes, we will have another brand new episode for you in early February, and we will be exploring the topic of humbleness at work. Good one, that.
Yeah,
looking forward to that, definitely.
CBBs, we know you are really, really busy, but it would mean the world to us if you could rate, review, and subscribe to the Coaching Cast wherever you listen. It really helps the podcast more than you know, and means you don't have to worry about remembering to download it either. We like to end each episode of the podcast with our personal song recommendation, giving you energy and motivation as you launch into the next part of your working day. It's my choice to kick us off with in this new year. And this week I have chosen a really classic song that reminds me of, I think it must be early, like working life straight after university. I'm sure this is when this came out and I was living in London. And it is the Klaxons, It's Not Over Yet. I heard it recently and I was like, yes, I love this tune. It's such a banger. So I really hope that those of you in the same generation as me will love it, to remind you of those more younger, crazy days, as well as those of you who potentially haven't heard this before. Check it out, add it to your playlists. It's a tune.
I'm going to do that. I've not listened to it for a while, so that's a really good prompt. Thank you. Right, well, on thank yous, thank you so much for listening, CBBs, and remember, you've got this.